if you have a regulation you want, number one, we're not going to approve it because it's already been approved probably in 17 different forms. But if we do, the only way you have a chance is we have to knock out 2 regulations for every new regulation. So if there's a new regulation, they have to knock out 2.
All right, here's the thing, though. We've got tens of thousands of federal regulations, some duplicates of the process of the hundreds in one area. But the fact of the matter is, President Trump targeting regulations today, saying that maybe there's a better way to do this, that for every new regulation we come up with, we remove 2 that we don't need anymore. Even with that, though, it's a Herculean task to change stuff, whether by executive order or memoranda. This, by the way, the 15th such executive order, memoranda, whatever you want to call it, on this young administration to Forbes media chairman Steve Forbes. You know, Steve, you talk about this with a lot of people. They say that, especially small business folks with whom the president was meeting today, this is more of a problem for them than taxes.
Well, regulations are killers. We especially saw it with Obamacare, where you were restricted on the number of hours you could have people work, number of people you could have working before your expenses went way up if you grew above 50 employees. So, yes, and they don't have the departments that a big company has to cope with that kind of thing. So regulation is a form of taxation. What the president's doing today is a start. But the key is having cabinet members follow through and Congress follow through, starting by passing legislation that any regulation that's going to cost the economy more than $100 million a year has to be approved by Congress. So they start to take responsibility for these things.
You own it. You propose it, you own it. You know what worries me, though? A lot of people define their worth in Congress, not only by legislation they come up with just to look busy, but also regulations they come up with. So we call it do-nothing Congress, do nothing if it's not done anything like that, when in fact that might merit an award.
To see how the regulatory state is mushroomed, Congress passes about, what, 120 laws a year? Regulatory agencies, 3,000 rules a year having the force.
Is that right?
3,000 force of federal law. So that's where the real problem is, and today is a good first step. We know there's a problem. We got to start really doing something about it long term.
All right. I noticed you're in a sling. Please tell me this didn't happen because you've been fighting for these tax cuts, and they look like they're being pushed off.
Well, that's one reason why, key reason why you see what the stock market is doing today. Oh, my God, they may not do anything this year. And then you have Republicans in the House pushing this national sales tax, border sales tax, which will increase the cost of living for working Americans. And people are wondering, is this administration, is this whole new regime losing its way right at the beginning? So the one thing the president has to do...
The border sales tax had the appeal, Republicans say, of paying for the tax cuts. But it seems like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right?
When you add a new tax, it's
to pay for another tax.
Yeah, it's a new revenue stream. It just goes in one direction, especially since it's a hidden tax. Gasoline will go up 30 cents a gallon. So you're slamming the very people that elected Donald Trump, and people are wondering, what's happening here? So they got to reestablish, get those big tax cuts done now for people and for corporations. You need some cleanup later, fine, but get it done now, because otherwise...
The best scenario I heard, Steve, before, and you and I have chatted about this, is they hope to get corporate tax reform done, maybe to bring over some Democrats to it and make it bipartisan, talk about an infrastructure plan, then deal with the marginal tax rates later. What do you think of that?
It sounds very nice and tidy. And you will get Democrats supporting the corporate side. So you can do them, too, simultaneously. But to do business first and then say we'll do people later, especially if you're going to try to enact this...
Now you're in the midterm.
Good luck. Good luck. Get it done now. Just go for both.
But I get a sense, and I could be wrong, and look, the administration is only a little over a week old, but that they're falling behind the 8 ball on this, and that normally at this point you'd have the agenda ready to go. Here's what we're kicking around. Here's our tax cut plan, specifically that Ronald Reagan's was. And then, of course, there was a fighting back and forth. His got, ironically, a new lease on life. Remember with his assassination attempt? But it was out there. And then, you know, they were off to the races. It could still happen, but I'm wondering when they talk 200-day performance versus 100-day, when they talk about delays on some of this stuff, I just start saying, wait a minute, this is not going right.
Delay is the enemy of action. And to get in a fight, do we do Obamacare first? Do we do tax cuts first? Should it be corporate first, then personal? No. You do them both at once. And on the Obamacare, that's going to take time. But you start with nationwide shopping for health insurance. nationwide pricing transparency for hospitals and clinics. You can start real steps now that people can see a real difference. And not get bogged down.
There are plans there. There are at least half a dozen prominent Republican plans.
Yes.
The dirty little secret is it's not that Republicans don't have the plans, but then we have too many of them.
Yeah, there's a House committee. Republicans has 186 a bill ready to go, including good.
So you're worried just about whether maybe this whole travel ban thing got a lot of criticism. I don't know whether you feel that's justified, but the one thing that was happening is it got people off the discussion of tax cuts, and that's what worries me.
Well, putting aside the specifics, you can debate whether it should be $50,000 a year, refugees $30,000. That's very reasonable.
Right.
But clearly, to be blunt about it, they hadn't done their homework in terms of implementation. And I hope and every administration goes through this,
Absolutely.
by the way.
Absolutely.
And so the key
Remember
thing
Clinton
is, and John Kennedy with the Bay of Pigs,
absolutely.
huge disaster. But the key thing is learn from it and say, all right, we got to get this tax cut thing going, because if we start to show real progress in the economy, that gives you a lot of cover for a lot of other things.
Really, how did this happen to you?
Nothing heroic. Stepped off a curb, hit something slippery, and smack. Broke it in two places.
It wasn't someone in the Trump cabinet like...
No, or the House Ways and Means Committee,
No one.
you know, those tax raisers. No, can't blame them.
All right, well, feel better, my friend.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Steve Forbes. And he was an early worrier about this and looking at the timeline plan with an axe to grind for nobody, just saying you got to move fast.